Muller's interests was systematic and scientific, so his gardens reflected that, and they were quite formal gardens, and they weren't really the sort of gardens that Melburnians felt they wanted in their botanic gardens, and ultimately Muller was sacked because of that. William Guilfoyle was then appointed, and Guilfoyle was able to combine aesthetics and science into a pleasure garden, and very rapidly he created the gardens which Melburnians soon took to their hearts and really are the gardens we know today.
Logistically, from our point of view, getting in that amount of sculpture, some of which weighed up to 2 tonne, without literally taking a piece of bark off a tree was something akin to fighting World War III. But I think it says a lot for Ken Scarlett, who basically had the thing organised to the last dot on an I. When you look at a show like this, that's basically providing an opportunity for a section of our 1.5 million visitors to get a sculptural exhibition of this quality for free, you've really got to admire the support that the Philip Morris Group provide to us and other cultural institutions both here and around the world.
Philip Morris Group of Companies is proud to honour the 150th anniversary of the Royal Botanic Gardens by supporting the Sculpture Walk.
It's part of the very big series of events which the Botanic Gardens are arranging to celebrate their 150 years. I'm rather glad to say that the Sculpture Walk is probably the biggest event of all those 60 events that are occurring in 1996. Deborah Halpin's work would be well known to many people in Melbourne because she has that huge work, Angel, outside the National Gallery, Victoria.
The pieces are made using aluminium armatures with the ceramic tiles stuck on the outside of them and grouted. So they're made for external, living in the outdoors. Once they escape from the studio, which is an inorganic environment, they come into a life of their own here in the gardens with all the greenery and things that are growing and living, and they take on a life of their own.
When I walked through the Fern Gully and I saw a location which was absolutely ideal for the work of Chris Booth, he's the one person that we've invited outside the state of Victoria. He's a New Zealander. He's on a number of occasions made incredible rock columns, just a series of water wash stones piled one on top of the other, going sky high.
Philip Morris have kindly funded it, and as part of all the other installations on this place and for this exhibition. There's about 1.5 tonne of rock. They're river-worn, beautiful river-worn rocks from the North and the South Island of New Zealand, and they're lowered down over the rod, and it ends up being 7.5 metres tall. And then you'll notice at the very top of the rod there's actually a threaded piece with some nuts and a big washer. We then wind up those nuts on top of the rod, and it post-tensions the whole of the rod right through into the ground and ends up making the whole column erect. It just compresses all the rock at the same time as it's falling on the steel. That's called post-tensioning, and that's how we hope it's going to stand up.
Geoffrey Bartlett's work has always got a theatrical, dramatic quality. I often look at them and think that it's like seeing actors on stage, with sort of flamboyant gestures.
It's been a good opportunity for us all to have these works placed in this unsurpassed site. The two works that were chosen by Ken Scarlett are quite dissimilar in a sense for me, in that they were made over a fairly broad period of time. But it is interesting to see them together. They haven't been shown together in any way at all, but here, to have them together, it's sort of interesting to see how they do relate and how the environment that they're within seems to bind them together.
Sometimes I was just fortunate enough to visit an artist studio, as indeed was the case with Greg Clark, saw some works in progress, and one of them, of course, I immediately realised was absolutely wonderful, and I could immediately cite it. And that's the work called Tol Ton.
This site, it's the nature of the gardens, and it's got very different areas, which are some are lush and dense vegetation, and some are, like this site, is open grasslands, which suit both this sculpture, Tolton, and Lilo, the one further up the hill. The simple geometric shapes sit well in that area.
So people are either going to be terrified at the prospect of it rolling down and crushing them, or they're going to be highly amused at the ridiculous nature of this massive thing poised on the top of the hill. So for those reasons, it's going to attract a great deal of attention. Louise Paramore has done a number of works in which she has used bottles, glass, reflective mirror and so on. And I thought it would be quite wonderful if we could get her to produce some works which we could actually put out on the lake. So Louise has taken up the challenge and is making two works. One is a series of wine bottles glued together, and the other is a series of plastic spheres with little facets on them, which she will tie together in a grid-like form. And in both cases, they'll be floating on the lake. It's very hard to describe the works of Stellark because he's a performance artist. He's also interesting as a philosopher because he's intrigued by the notion that the human body is useless in this 20th century and it's got to be redesigned.
Well, I guess body art begins as a strategy of using the body itself as the medium of expression, as the sculptural element. And when you do these performances, you always kind of image the body as this component in a bigger technological installation. In a sense, the body becomes a kind of living sculpture.
And I think the Australian sculptors who are showing here today and for the next 3 months will be very pleased to hear that they're in quite remarkable company, because some of the exhibitions, for instance, which have been sponsored by the Philip Morris group of companies, is Matisse at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, or Louise Bourgeois at the Venice Biennale. Not bad company.